Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alley Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connect dot epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore. Please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description of this video. And you can check out my art portfolio, Creations211. You'll see paintings, different types of paintings, by the way. Pyramids are all behind me over there. More pyramids. And I make candles and do a lot of other stuff. You can email me. That's also in the description below. And for tomorrow, I'm going live, Friday Night Lives, and I am auctioning, well, it's raffling. I will one day do an auction, but not right now. Raffling off this beautiful pyramid. It's $100 value. That's up on my community tab for all the information. Friday afternoon is the closing of said raffle. And so far I have almost 25 people that are in the drawing for that raffle. So stay tuned. Tomorrow I'll be drawing that raffle. And it'll be fun. I'll put the numbers out for everybody tomorrow. Once it closes, I'll put it on my community tab. So this way everybody knows what number they have, and I'll post it on my social media. Blavatsky. I was going to do the message of Aquaria, but because it's short, I might just do that tomorrow too. It's just prayers. Stanza 8. Evolution of the animal mammalians and the first fall. And I need glasses. I have to enlarge this, sorry. How the first mammals were produced. A quasi-Darwinian evolution. The animals get solid bodies, their separation into sexes, the first sin of the mindless man. From the drops of sweat, from the residue of the substance, matter from dead bodies in animals of the wheel before, previous third round, and from cast-off dust, the first animals of this round were produced. The occult doctrine maintains that in the round, the mammalians were a later work of evolution than man. Evolution proceeds in cycles. The great Monvarotic cycle of 7 rounds begins in the first round with mineral, vegetable, and animal, brings its evolutionary work on the descending arc to a dead stop in the middle of the 4th race. At the close of the first half of the 4th round, it is on our Earth, then the 4th sphere and the lowest, and in the present round, that this middle point has been reached. And since the monad has passed after its first in-metallization on globe A through the mineral, vegetable, and animal worlds in every degree of the 3 states of matter, except the last degree of the 3rd or solid state, which it reached only at the midpoint of evolution, it is but logical and natural that at the beginning of the 4th round on globe D, man should be the first to appear. And also that his frame should be of the most tenuous matter that is comparable with objectivity. To make it still clearer, if the monad begins its cycle of incarnations through the 3 objective kingdoms on the descending curve line, it has necessarily to enter on the reascending curve line of the sphere as a man also. On the descending arc, it is the spiritual which is gradually transformed into the material. On the middle lines of the base, spiritual matter are I don't know how to pronounce that. In man, equilibrized. It's not equilibrium. Something to that nature. On the ascending arc, spirit is slowly reasserting itself at the expense of the physical or matter, so that at the close of the seventh race of the seventh round, the monad will find itself as free from matter and all its qualities as it was in the beginning, having gained in addition the experience and wisdom, the fruition of all its personal lives throughout their evil and temptations. This order of evolution is found also in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, if one reads it in its true esoteric sense. For chapter 1 contains the history of the first 3 rounds, as well as that of the first 3 races of the 4th, up to the moment when man is called to conscious life by the Elohim of wisdom. In the first chapter, animals, whales, and fowls of the air are created before the androgyny Adam. In the second, Adam the sexless comes first, and the animals only appear after him. Even the state of mental torpor and unconsciousness of the first 2 races and of the first half of the 3rd race is symbolized in the 2nd chapter of Genesis by the deep sleep of Adam. It was the dreamless sleep of mental inaction, the slumber of the soul and mind, which was meant by that sleep, and not at all the physiological process of differentiation of sexes, as learned French theorist M. Moudon imagined. The Puranas, the Chaldean and the Egyptian fragments, and also the Chinese traditions, all show an agreement with the secret doctrine as to the process and order of evolution. We find in them the collaboration of almost all our teachings. For instance, the statement concerning the oviporous mode of procreation of the 3rd race, and even a hint at less innocent mode of the procreation of the first mammal forms, gigantic, transparent, dumb, and monstrous they were, says the commentary. Study the stories of the several rishis and their multifarious progeny. Astra is the father of all the serpents and nagas, the oviporous brood. Kaispa was grandsire through the wife Tamara of the birds, and Garada, king of the feathered tribe, while by his wife Sarabadi, he was the parent of cows and buffaloes. In the secret doctrine, the first Nagas, beings wiser than serpents, are the sons of will and yoga, born before the complete separation of the sexes, matured in the man bearing eggs, produced by the power of the holy sages of the early 3rd race. In these were incarnated the lords of the 3 upper worlds, the various classes of Rudras, who had been I'm not getting that one out, who had been Fayas, who are a deity, and sorry guys, I'm not going to kill myself with pronouncing words I can't project. For as explained by Parasara, there are 100 appellations of immeasurability mighty Rudras. Some of the descendants of the primitive Nagas, the serpents of wisdom, peopled America when its continent arose during the palmy days of the great Atlantis, America being the antipodes of Jambu Dwapa, not of Bharatavarsha. Otherwise, once the traditions and legends, the latter always more than true history, as says Augustine theory, and even the identity in the names of certain medicine men and priests who existed to this day in Mexico. We shall have to say something of the Nagrals and the Nagrals, and also of Nagalism, called devil worship by the missionaries. And also all the Puranas, the story of the sacrifice of Daksha is given, the oldest account of which is to be found in Vayu Purana. Allegorically, as it is, there is more meaning and biological revelation in it to the naturalist than in all the pseudoscientific vulgarities which are regarded as learned theories and hypotheses. Daksha, who is regarded as the chief progenitor, is moreover pointed out as the creator of the physical man in the fable, which makes him lose his head from his body in the general strife between the gods and the Ramas. This head, being burnt in the fire, is replaced by the head of a ram. Now the ram's head and horns are ever the symbol of generating power and of reproductive force and are phallic. As we have shown, it is Daksha who established the era of man engendered by sexual intercourse. But this mode of procreation did not occur suddenly, as one may think, and require long ages before it became the one natural way. Therefore, his sacrifice to the gods is shown as an interfered with Siva, destroying deity, evolution, and progress personified, who is the regenerator at the same time, who destroys things under one form, but to recall them to life under another more perfect type. Siva Rudra creates the terrible Varadara, born of his breath, the thousand-headed, thousand-armed monster, and commissions him to destroy the sacrifice prepared by Daksha. Then Varahadra, abiding in the region of the ghosts, ethereal men, created from the pores of the skin, powerful Rumas. Now, however, mythical, the allegory, the Mahabharata, which is history as much as it is the Iliad, shows the Rumaris. I'm butchering these words, so I do apologize. It's pissing me off. I'm not here to disrespect the Indian culture or their language and other races as springing in the same manner from the Roma Kupras, hair or skin pores. This allegorical description of the sacrifice is full of significance to the students of the secret doctrine who know of the sweat born. In the Vayu Puranas account of Daksha's sacrifice, moreover, it is said to have taken place in the presence of creatures born from the egg, from the vapor, vegetation, pores of the skin, and finally only from the womb. Interesting. Daksha typifies the early third race, holy and pure, still devoid of an individual ego, and having merely the passive capabilities and capacities. Brahma therefore commands him to create an exoteric text. When obeying the command, he made inferior and superior progeny, bipeds and quadrupeds, and by his will gave birth to females, to the gods, the deities, messed that one up, giants of the fourth race, the snake gods, animals, cattle, and the Danavas, titans, and demon magicians, and other beings. From the period forward, living creatures were engendered by sexual intercourse. Before the time of Daksha, they were various propagated by the will, by sight, by touch, and by yoga power. And now comes the simply zoological teaching. Animals with bones, dragons of the deep, and flying sarpas, serpents, were added to the creeping things. They that creep on the ground got wings. They of the long necks in the water became the progenitors of the fowls of the air. This is a point on which the teachings of modern biological speculation are in perfect accord. The missing links representing this transition process between reptile and bird are apparent to the varieties bigot, especially in the I'm not pronouncing any of that, so you'll have to go read the book to figure that one out. It's a zoological terminology there. During the third race, the boneless animals grew and changed. They became animals with bones. Their shayas became solid. The animals separated the first into male and female vertebrates, and after the mammalians. Before that, the animals were also ethereal proto-organisms, just as man was. The fact of former hermaphrodite mammals and the subsequent separation of sexes is now indisputable, even for the standpoint of biology, as Professor Oscar Schmidt, an avoid Darwinist, shows. Use and disuse combined with selection elucidate the separation of the sexes and the existence totally incomprehensible of rudimentary sexual organs. In the vertebra, especially, each sex possesses such distinct traces of the reproductive apparatus characteristic of the other that even antiquity assumed hermaphrodism as a natural primeval form of mankind. The tendency with which the rudiments of sexual organs are inherent is remarkable. In the class of mammals, actual hermaphrodism is unheard of, although through the whole period of their development, they drag along with them these residues borne by their unknown ancestry, no one can say how long. They, the animal, began to bred. The twofold man then separated also. He, man, said, let us, as they, let us unite and make creatures. They did. And those which had no spark, the narrow-brained, took huge she-animals unto them. They begat upon them dumb races. Dumb they were, the narrow-brained, themselves, but their tongues united. The tongues of their progeny remained still. Monsters they bred, a race of crooked, red-haired, covered monsters going on all fours, a dumb race to keep the shame untold. The animals separated the first, says stanza 31. Bear in mind that at the period men were different, even physiologically, from what they are now, having passed the middle point of the fifth race. We are not told that the huge she-animals were, but they certainly were a different from any we know now, as were the men. This was the first physical fall into matter of some of them existing in lower races. Bear in mind, stanza 24, the sons of wisdom had spun the early third race, the non-developed, and are shown incarnating in, thereby endowing with intellect, the later third race. Thus, the sin of the brainless or mindless races had no spark, and were irresponsible, fell upon those who failed to do by them their karmic duty. See later on concerning the beginning of the human speech. What may be the objections to the foregoing? Thus, occultism rejects the idea that nature developed man from the ape, or even from an ancestor common to both, but traces, on the contrary, some of the most anthropod species to the third race, men of the early Atlantean period. As the proposition will be maintained and defended elsewhere, a few words more are all that are needed at present. For greater clearness, however, we shall repeat in brief what was said previously in Book 1, stanza 6. Our teachings show that while it is quite correct to say that nature had built at one time around the human astral form an ape-like external shape, yet it is as correct that the shape was no more than that of the missing link. Then were the coverings of the astral form during the course of its natural evolution through all the kingdoms of nature. Nor was it, as shown in proper place on the fourth round planet, that each and such evolution took place, but only during the first, second, and third rounds, when then was, in turn, a stone, a plant, and an animal. I say this all the time. Until he became what he was in the first root race of present humanity. The real line of evolution differs from the Darwinian and two systems of irretrievable, except when the latter is divorced from the dogma of natural selection and the like. Indeed, between the Monera of Haeckel and something of Manu, there lies an impassable chasm in the shape of the Viva. Or is that J or F? I can't. Sorry, guys. Everything in italics is very hard for me to see. For the human monad, whether in metallized in the stone atom or in vegetized in the plant or in animalized in the animal, it's still and ever a divine, hence also human monad. It ceases to be human only when it becomes absolutely divine. The terms mineral, vegetable, and animal monad are meant to create a superficial distinction. There is no such thing as a monad, Java, other than divine, and consequently having been or having to become human. And the latter term has to remain meaningless unless the difference is well understood. The monad is a drop out of the shoreless ocean beyond, or to be correct, within the plane of primitive differentiation. It is divine in its higher and human in its lower condition. The adjectives higher and lower being used for the lack of better words, and a monad it remains at all times, save in the form, in the nirvanic state, under whatever conditions or whatever external forms. As the logos reflects the universe in the divine mind, and the manifested universe reflects itself in each of its monads, the Leibniz put it, repeating an Eastern teaching, so the monad has, during the cycle of its incarnations, to reflect in itself every root form of each kingdom. Therefore, the Kabbalists say correctly that man becomes a stone, a plant, an animal, a man, a spirit, and finally God. That's damn true. Thus accomplishing his cycle or circuit and returning to the point from which he has started as the heavenly man. But by man, the divine monad is meant and not the thinking entity, much less his physical body. While rejecting the immortal soul, the men of science now try to trace the latter through a series of animal forms from the lowest to the highest, whereas in truth, all the present fauna are the descendants of those primordial monsters of which the stanzas speak. The animals, the creeping beasts, and those in the waters that preceded man in this fourth round, as well as those contemporary with the third race, and again the mammalia, that are posterior to the third and fourth races. All are either directly or indirectly the mutual and correlative product physically of man. It is correct to say that the man of the Mahabharata during the three preceding rounds has passed through all of the kingdoms of nature, that he was a stone, a plant, and an animal. I say this all the time. But these stones, plants, and animals were the prototypes, the filmy presentments of those of the fourth round, and even those at the beginning of the fourth round were the astral shadows of the present, as these occultists express it. And finally, the forms and genera of neither man, animal, nor plant were what they became later. Thus, the astral prototypes of the lower beings of the animal kingdom of the fourth round, which preceded the Shayas of man, were the consolidated through still very ethereal sheaths of still more ethereal forms or models produced at the close of the third round on globe D, produced from the residue of the substance matter from dead bodies of men and other extinct animals of the wheel before, or the previous third round, as stanza 24 tells us. Hence, while the nondescript animals that precede the astral man at the beginning of this life cycle on our earth were still, so to speak, the progeny of man of the third round, the mammalians of this round owe their existence in a great measure to man again. Moreover, the ancestor of the present anthropod animal, the ape, is the direct production of the yet mindless man who desecrated his human dignity by putting himself physically on the level of an animal. The above accounts for some of the alleged physiological proofs brought forward by the anthropologists as a demonstration of the descent of man from the animals. The point most insisted upon by the evolutionists is that the history of the embryo is an epitome of that of the race, that every organism in its development from the egg runs through a series of forms, through which, in like succession, its ancestors have passed in the long course of Earth's history. The history of the embryo is a picture in little, an outline of that of the race. This conception forms the gist of our fundamental biogenetic law, which we are obliged to place at the head of the study of the fundamental law of organic development. This modern theory was known as a fact too, and far more philosophically expressed by the sages and the occultists from the remotest ages. A passage from Isis Unveiled may here be cited to furnish a few points of comparison. In Volume 1, page 388 through 9, it was asked why, with all their great learning, physiologists were unable to explain teratological phenomena. Any anatomists who have made the development and growth of the embryo a subject of special study can tell, without much brain work, what daily experience and the evidence of his own eyes show him, that up to a certain period, the human embryo is a facsimile of a young Batrachian in its first remove from the spawn of tadpole. But no physiologist, projection again, or animist seems to have had the idea of applying to the development of human being from the first instant of its physical appearance as a germ to its ultimate formation and birth, the Pythagorean esoteric doctrine of metapsychosis, so erroneously interpreted by critics. The meaning of the axiom, a stone becomes a plant, a beast, a man, was mentioned in another place in relation to the spiritual and physical evolution of men on this earth. We will now add a few more words to make the matter clearer. What is primitive shape of the future man? A grain, a corpuscle, say some physiologists. Gosh, my mouth and my brain do not function together. Sorry. A molecule, an ovum of the ovum, says others. If it could be analyzed by the microscopic or otherwise, of what ought we to expect to find it composed? Analogically, we should say of a nucleus of inorganic matter deposited from the circulation of the germinating point and united with a deposit of organic matter. In other words, the infestimal nucleus of the future man is composed of the same elements as a stone, of the same elements as the earth, which the man is destined to inhabit. Moses is cited by the Kabbalists as authority for the remark, that which is required, earth and water, to make a living being, and thus it may be said that man first appears as a stone. At the end of 3 or 4 weeks, the ovum has assumed a plant-like appearance, one extremity having become spheroidal, and the other tapering like a carrot. Upon dissection, it is found to be composed like an onion, of very delicate laminae or coats, enclosing a liquid. The laminae approach each other at the lower end, and the embryo hangs from the root of the umbilicus, almost like the fruit from the froth. The stone has now become changed by the metapsychosis into a plant. Then the embryonic creature begins to shoot out from the inside out its limbs and develops its features. The eyes are visible as 2 black dots, the ears, nose, mouth from depressions, like the points of a pineapple, before they begin to project. The embryo develops into an animal-like fetus, the shape of a tadpole, and like an amphibious reptile, lives in water and develops from it. Its monad has not yet become either human or immortal, for the Kabbalists tell us that this only occurs at the 4th hour. One by one, the fetus assumes the characteristics of a human being. The first flutter of an immortal breath passes through its being. It moves, and the divine essence settles in the infant frame, which it will inhabit until the moment of physical death, when man becomes a spirit. The mysterious process of the 9 months formation, the Kabbalists call the completion of its individual cycle of evolution, as the fetus develops amidst the liquor of Amani in the womb, so the earths germinate in the universal ether or astral fluid in the womb of the universe. These cosmic children, like their pygmy inhabitants, are first nuclei, then ovals, then generally and gradually mature and becoming mothers, in their turn develop mineral, vegetable, animal, and human forms. From center to circumference, from the imperceivable vestal to the utmost conceivable bounds of the cosmos, these glorious thinkers, the occultists, trace cycle, merging into cycle, containing and contained in an endless series, the embryo evolving in its prenatal sphere, the individual and his family, and the family in the state in mankind, the earth in our system, the system in its central universe, the universe in the cosmos in the one cause. Thus runs their philosophy of evolution, differing, as we see, from that of Haeckel. All are but parts of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and Parabrahman, the soul. Interesting. These are the proofs of occultism, and they are rejected by science. But how is the chasm between the mind of man and animal to be bridged in this case? How if the anthropod and Homo primigenius had a common ancestor, in the way modern speculation puts it, did the two groups diverge so widely from one another as regards mental capacity? True, the occultists may be told that holy crap. Let's rewind. True, the occultists may be true that in every case, occultism does what science repeats. It gives a common ancestor to ape and man, since it makes the former issue from primeval man. But that primeval man was man only in external form. He was mindless and soulless at the time he begot with the female animal monster, the forefather of a series of apes. The speculation, if speculation it be, is at least logical and fills a chasm between the mind of man and animal. Thus it accounts for and explains the hereto unaccountable and inexplicable. The fact that in the present stage of evolution, science is almost certain that no issue can follow from the union of man and animal to be considered and explained elsewhere. Now, what is the fundamental difference between the accepted or nearly conclusions as enumerated in the pedigree of man, that man and ape have common ancestor, and the teachings of occultism, which deny that this conclusion and accept the fact that all things and all living beings have originated from one common source? Materialistic science makes man evolve gradually to what he is now, and starting from the first protoplasmic speck called Monrion, which we are all told has, like the rest, originated in the course of immeasurable ages from a few, or from one sample, spontaneously arising original form, that has obeyed one law of evolution, passed through unknown and unknowable types up to the ape, and thence to the human being. Where the transitional shapes are discoverable, we are not told, for the simple reason that no missing links between men and the apes have ever been yet found, though this fact is in no way prevents man like Haeckel from inventing them ad libitum. Nor will they ever be met with, simply again because the link which unites man with his real ancestry is searched for in an objective plane and in material world of forms, whereas it is safely hidden from the microscopic and dissecting knife within the animal tabernacle of man himself. We repeat what we have said in Isis Unveiled. all things had their origin in spirit, evolution having originally begun from above and proceeded downward instead of the reverse as taught in the Darwinian theory. In other words, there has been a gradual materialization of forms until a fixed ultimate of debasement is reached. This point is that of which the doctrine of modern evolution enters into the arena of speculative hypothesis. Arrived at this period, we will find it easier to understand Haeckel's anthropogeny, which traces the pedigree of man from its protoplasmic root, sodden in the mud of seas, which existed before the oldest of the fossiliferous rocks were deposited, according to Professor Huxley's exposition. We may believe that man of the third round evolved by gradual modification of an astral mammal of ape-like organization, still easier than we remember that through in a more condensed and less elegant, but still as comprehensible phraseology. The same theory was said by Berosus to have been taught many thousands of years before his time by the manfish Oriones or Dagon, the semi-demon of Babylonia, though on somewhat modified lines. But what lies back of the Darwinian line of descent? So far as he is concerned, nothing but unvariable hypothesis. For as he puts it, he views all beings as a lineal descendants of some few beings which lived long before the first bed of the Solarian system was deposited. He does not attempt to show us who these few beings were, but it answers our purpose quite as well, for in admission of their existence at all, resort to the ancients for corroboration and elaboration of the idea receives the stamp of scientific approbation. Truly, as also said in our first work, if we accept Darwin's theory of the development of species, we find that his starting point is placed in front of an open door. We are at liberty with him to either remain within or cross the threshold beyond, which lies the limitless and the incomprehensible, or rather the unutterable. If our mortal language is inadequate to express what our spirit dimly foresees in the great beyond, while on this earth, it must realize it had at some point in the timeless eternity. But what lies beyond Haeckel's theory? Why Babylonius Haeckel and no more? Further answer is given in part 3. And here ends stanza 8. I didn't have to do a two-parter here. Very interesting, and a lot of things that I say, also Dolores Cannon says, as does Blavatsky and the occultist, that we are all one with all things. Therefore, we are the rock, the grass, the tree, the flower. We're all things in different densities and dimensional spaces. So when my Morgan cat passed away, I said she was me in second density, because she is a familiar of mine. That can hold true. She's going to be human next round. She was self-identified in the mirror. She looked and saw herself. She saw more than herself. She's self-identified. If animals can self-identify, they're in third density, therefore they're moving up into a human, in my estimation, in my perception. So there is a lot of credence to this. Dolores Cannon says very similar things. When people are taken back into QHHT sessions, they find themselves the rock, the air, the blade of grass. So these people, us, have evolved from first density, first round, all the way up into what we are right now cognizant of. So it is very interesting indeed, and something to ponder. Sorry about the mispronunciations of words. I will hopefully one day have new teeth. and maybe project better, possibly. I don't know. Dentures, I think I'd be worse off, but let's hope I can regrow teeth. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and hopefully you subscribe, you like, you share. It's just knowledge. Take it. If it doesn't resonate with you, throw it out. I think it's very expanding of minds to see different perspectives of how things became in our reality. So sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within, be the shoulder, be the lighthouse, seed your truths. I hope to see you all tomorrow on Friday Night Live. And until the next one, guys, thank you for your support, your generosity, and your love. Bye for now.